The detection came during what should have been a routine sweep of deep space signals. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the dimly lit monitoring station of the Global Space Communication Array, her eyes glazing over as she watched the usual cosmic static scroll across her screens. 20 years of listening to the stars had yielded nothing but false hopes and background radiation. Until now. The signal cut through the noise like a laser through fog, a clear, structured pattern that made every detection algorithm light up simultaneously. Sarah's hands trembled as she initiated the verification protocols, her heart pounding against her ribcage. This wasn't like the promising signals they'd detected before. This was different. "Control, this is Station 7. She managed to keep her voice steady. "I'm detecting an artificial signal. Pattern matches none of our known human sources, requesting immediate verification." Within minutes, the GSCA's primary control room transformed from its usual quiet efficiency into a hub of controlled chaos. Director Marcus Rodriguez appeared at Sarah's station, his usually immaculate uniform showing signs of a hurried dressing. "Talk to me, Dr. Chen. The signal carries embedded mathematical sequences, sir. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and—" She paused, double-checking her readings, what appears to be a periodic table of elements. "They're not just broadcasting. They're trying to prove their intelligence." Rodriguez leaned closer to the screen, his dark eyes reflecting the scrolling data. "Location: approximately 147 light-years from Earth, sir. Orion's arm." Sarah pulled up a star chart, highlighting a cluster of stars. "The signal's coming from this region." As teams of cryptographers and linguists descended upon the data, a pattern emerged that made even the most skeptical scientists fall silent. The aliens, who identified themselves as the Meridians, were sending more than just proof of their existence. They were sending a plea for help. The message, once decoded, painted a grim picture. The Meridians were an advanced civilization that had mastered faster than light travel centuries ago. They had built vast cities among the stars and had technologies that seemed like magic by human standards. But now they faced an extinction-level event that all their advancement couldn't solve. A massive radiation storm, unlike anything their scientists had ever seen, was approaching their home system. Their initial attempts to deflect or shield against it have failed catastrophically. Their sophisticated biological engineering, which had allowed them to adapt to various worlds, had reached its limits. The radiation was of a type that their bodies simply couldn't process or resist. But why contact us? The question came from General Laura Hayes during the emergency briefing at the United Earth Council. Surely there are more advanced civilizations out there. Dr. James Wilson, the lead xenobiologist assigned to the project, stepped forward. "That's the fascinating part, General. They chose us specifically because of our perceived primitive state." He pulled up a holographic display showing comparative DNA structures. "The Meridians have been watching us for some time. They've observed how human beings have naturally evolved to handle radiation exposure. Our DNA repair mechanisms are uniquely robust, something they lost long ago in favor of more efficient engineered solutions." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Humanity's primitive biology, shaped by millions of years of evolution on a planet bathed in solar radiation, might hold the key to saving a civilization that had long since engineered past such inefficient natural processes. The council chamber erupted in heated debate. Some argued that humanity should focus on its own problems rather than risk involvement in alien affairs. Others saw this as an unprecedented opportunity to advance human knowledge and establish Earth's place among the stars. "We can't just let them die." Sarah spoke up from her position at the technical advisory panel. "Think about what this means. An advanced civilization is turning to us for help, not because we have the best technology, but because we have something they've lost: the ability to adapt, to survive against the odds." The room fell silent as Council President Amara Okafor stood. Her presence commanded attention, her voice carrying the weight of generations of human struggle and achievement. "Throughout our history, Humanity has faced countless challenges that seemed insurmountable. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own near destruction of Earth's climate. Each time, we've emerged stronger, not because we had the perfect solution, but because we never stopped trying to find one. She paused, looking at each person in the room. The Meridians may have mastered the stars, but we have mastered something perhaps more valuable: resilience. They need that now more than ever. The vote was unanimous. Earth would help. Within days, the GSCA began transmitting Earth's response back to the Meridians. The message was simple: we hear you. We're coming. As preparation for the joint mission began, no one could have predicted how this decision would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. The primitive species that had barely reached its own moon was about to teach the stars a lesson about survival that would echo through the centuries to come. The real question wasn't whether humanity could help the Meridians. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what humanity would become once it took its first true steps into the cosmic community. The Meridian ship that arrived in Earth's orbit 3 weeks later to fight everything humans thought they knew about spacecraft design. It resembled a living crystal, its surface shifting with iridescent patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. But Dr. Sarah Chen's attention wasn't on the ship's aesthetic beauty. It was on the biological samples being transported to her lab at the Global Research Institute. The samples came from 3 different Meridian volunteers, their genetic material carefully preserved in containers that looked more like works of art than scientific equipment. Sarah's team had been working around the clock, studying how the Meridians' engineered biology had left them vulnerable to the approaching radiation storm. Their DNA repair mechanisms are practically non-existent, Sarah explained to the assembled team of international scientists. She gestured to the holographic display showing the comparative analysis. They engineered them out centuries ago, replacing them with artificial systems that were more efficient, at least against the types of radiation they normally encountered. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the lead radiation specialist, pointed to another section of the display. The artificial systems are impressive, but they're too specialized. They can't adapt to new threats. It's like having the world's best shield against bullets, only to face an enemy with lasers. The Meridian observer, who called himself First Scholar Ven, watched the proceedings with an expression that mixed hope and disbelief. Like all his kind, he stood nearly 7 feet tall, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the laboratory's bright lights. Our ancestors believed they were perfecting our species, he said, his voice carrying a musical quality that the universal translators couldn't quite filter out. They never considered that perfection might become our weakness. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a specialist in human evolution, had been studying genetic samples from indigenous populations living in high-altitude regions with naturally elevated radiation levels. "Look at this," she called out one evening, her excitement drawing others to her workstation. "These populations have developed enhanced DNA repair mechanisms over thousands of generations. Their cells don't just repair radiation damage, they adapt to it." The discovery sparked an idea that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Instead of trying to engineer a completely new protection system for the Meridians, why not help them regain what evolution had given humanity? The team began working on a way to incorporate human DNA repair mechanisms into Meridian biology. The process was far from simple. Meridian biology, for all its engineered perfection, was fundamentally different from human physiology. Early attempts to integrate human genetic sequences failed spectacularly, with test cultures dissolving into useless masses of unviable cells. "We're thinking about this wrong," Sarah announced during one particularly frustrating session. "We're trying to force human solutions onto Meridian biology. What if instead we teach their existing systems how to adapt?" She pulled up the latest failed test results. "Look at how their artificial repair systems respond. They're not failing because they can't handle the radiation. They're failing because they don't know how to learn from the damage." The team shifted their approach. Instead of trying to replicate human DNA repair mechanisms exactly, they began developing a hybrid system that would use the Meridian's existing artificial repairs as a framework, but introduce the adaptability of human cellular responses. First, Scholar Venn watched in amazement as the human scientists worked. They didn't use the pristine, automated laboratories his people would have employed. Instead, their work was often messy, involving trial and error, failed attempts, and constant adjustments. But with each failure, they learned something new, adapted their approach, and tried again. "Your species is remarkable," he commented to Sarah one evening as she reviewed the latest test results. "We would have given up after the first few failures, assuming our initial calculations were wrong. But you seem to draw strength from failure itself." Sarah smiled, remembering her grandmother's words about her own research career. "Failure is just another word for learning opportunity. Every time something doesn't work, we understand a little more about how to make it work." The breakthrough finally came after 3 months of continuous work. The team had successfully created a treatment that would essentially teach Meridian cellular repair systems how to adapt to new forms of radiation damage. The initial trials on tissue samples showed promising results. The modified cells not only survived exposure to the radiation that threatened the Meridian home system, but actually became more resistant with each exposure. But there was a catch. The treatment would need to be administered to the entire Meridian population, all 12 billion of them, before the radiation storm hit their system. And the treatment itself would need to be customized for different genetic variations within the Meridian population. "It's impossible," one of the Meridian scientists declared when they ran the calculations. "Even with all our ships, we couldn't treat everyone in time." General Hayes, who had been quietly observing the project's progress, stepped forward. "Then we don't use just your ships. Every space-worthy vessel Earth has will join the effort. We'll convert cargo holds into treatment centers, train emergency response teams, do whatever it takes." President Okafor took the proposal to the United Earth Council. "We're not just saving another civilization," she argued. "We're proving that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to face impossible odds and find a way through." The Council's response was unprecedented. Every nation with space capability pledged their resources. Private space companies redirected their vessels. Even countries without space programs offered medical personnel and support services. As the joint fleet prepared for departure, Sarah stood at her laboratory window, watching ships from a dozen Earth nations take position alongside the crystalline Meridian vessels. The sight brought tears to her eyes, not just because of its beauty, but because of what it represented. Humanity's first major contribution to galactic civilization wouldn't be some grand technological achievement. Instead, they would be remembered as the species that taught the stars how to adapt, how to learn from failure, and how to become stronger by embracing imperfection. The real test was about to begin. The journey to the Meridian home system took 2 weeks. Even with the advanced FTL technology of the alien ships, the combined fleet of human and Meridian vessels moved through space like a river of lights. 300 ships carrying the hopes of 2 civilizations. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Resilient, watching the strange patterns of FTL travel twist through the viewscreen. As the fleet's operational coordinator, she had spent months preparing for this mission, but nothing could have truly prepared her for the reality of faster-than-light travel or the responsibility that weighed on her shoulders. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the pressure. "All ships maintaining formation." Lieutenant Park responded from his station. "Treatment production facilities operating at 97% efficiency. Medical teams report ready status across the fleet." The massive undertaking had required a complete reimagining of how to deploy medical aid on a planetary scale. Every Earth ship had been retrofitted with treatment production facilities, using technology that merged human medical equipment with Meridian bioengineering. The sight of human doctors working alongside Meridian healers had become commonplace, each learning from the other's approaches. First Scholar Venn, now serving as the liaison between the two species, approached Elena's command station. "Commander, our long-range sensors are detecting increasing radiation levels. The storm's intensity has grown beyond our initial calculations." Elena studied the data on her display. The radiation storm was moving faster than predicted, its leading edge already beginning to affect the outer reaches of the Meridian system. They would have less time than planned to implement the treatment. "Send word to all ships," she ordered. "We're initiating Protocol Omega. No more trial runs. As soon as we exit FTL, we begin immediate deployment." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Meridian system, and for a moment, everyone on the bridge fell silent. The Meridian home system was a testament to their technological advancement. Massive orbital structures encircled their planets, and city ships moved between worlds like cosmic dancers. But the beauty was marred by the approaching wall of radiation, visible even to the naked eye as a shimming curtain of death, slowly advancing toward the populated worlds. "Multiple Meridian vessels approaching," Lieutenant Park announced. "They're asking for immediate authentication." Elena transmitted the prepared codes, and within moments, the fleet was surrounded by Meridian defense ships. The sight of human vessels in their home system, something unthinkable just months ago, spoke volumes about their desperation. The next hours were a blur of activity. The fleet split into predetermined groups, each targeting specific population centers. The Resilient took position above Meridian Prime, the species' capital world, its cargo holds already humming with activity as treatment production reached full capacity. "First wave of treatments ready for deployment." Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came through the comm system from the medical bay. She had insisted on being on the front lines, overseeing the treatment production personally. But the initial deployment revealed a problem they hadn't anticipated. The Meridian's automated medical systems, designed for their standard treatments, were rejecting the hybrid human-Meridian solution. The carefully planned automated distribution network was useless. "Their systems can't handle something this adaptive," Sarah explained during the emergency conference. "The treatment keeps changing as it learns to work with each patient's biology. Their computers are trying to standardize it, which defeats the whole purpose." Elena looked around the conference room, seeing the growing desperation on both human and Meridian faces. The radiation storm would reach the outer colonies within days. Without the automated systems, they couldn't possibly treat enough people in time. Then a young Meridian medical technician spoke up. "What if we don't use the automated systems at all?" The room turned to look at her. "Your species administered vaccines to billions without automation, didn't you? During your pandemic eras." Elena exchanged glances with Sarah. It was true. Humanity had faced similar logistical challenges before. During global health crises, they had managed to reach billions through manual distribution networks, local clinics, and community organization. "We do it the old-fashioned way," Elena announced. "Person to person, community by community. Every ship becomes a mobile clinic. We train local volunteers to administer the treatment. No computers, no automation. Just people helping people." The Meridians were shocked by the suggestion. The idea of handling such a critical treatment without automated precision seemed reckless. But as the radiation levels continued to rise, they had no choice but to trust the human approach. The next phase of the operation transformed the Meridian worlds. Human medical teams worked alongside hastily trained Meridian volunteers. Every available space became a treatment center, from crystal spires to community gathering places. The sight of Meridians learning to give manual injections, guided by human nurses, became common across the system. "This is chaos," one Meridian administrator complained, watching the bustling activity in what had once been a serene governmental plaza. "This is adaptation," Elena corrected him. "This is how humanity has survived everything thrown at us. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome." The numbers began to grow. Thousands, then millions receiving the treatment. The human approach, while seemingly disorganized, was proving more efficient than anyone had expected. Communities took ownership of their own treatment programs, with local leaders organizing their people in ways the automated systems never could have managed. But they were racing against time. The radiation storm's leading edge had already reached the outermost colonies, and reports were coming in of the first casualties among the untreated population. The question wasn't just whether their solution would work, it was whether they could implement it fast enough to save everyone. As Elena watched the streams of people moving through the treatment centers, she realized that this mission had become about more than just saving the Meridian species. They were teaching one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy a lesson humanity had learned through countless struggles. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most elegant or advanced, but the ones that bring people together. The radiation storm hit the first major population center with the force of a cosmic sledgehammer. The Meridian colony on Outpost 7, home to nearly 1 million people, watched as their protective shields flickered and failed against the onslaught. But unlike previous radiation events, this time the population didn't panic. They were ready. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the colony's central monitoring facility, watching as the first wave of treated Meridians faced the full force of the storm. The room was thick with tension as both human and Meridian scientists held their breath, waiting to see if months of work would prove successful. "First exposure readings coming in," announced Dr. Tanaka, his fingers dancing across the holographic displays. "Cellular responses strong. The treatment is holding." The collective sigh of relief filled the room, but Sarah's eyes remained fixed on the data streams. Something wasn't right. The radiation levels were climbing faster than their models had predicted, and the storm's composition was shifting, becoming more complex with each passing hour. "We're seeing mutation," she declared, her voice cutting through the celebration. "The storm is evolving, changing its radiation signature. The treatment needs to adapt faster than we anticipated." The news hit like a physical blow. They had based their entire strategy on the storm maintaining a relatively stable radiation profile. If it was actively mutating, even their adaptive treatment might not be able to keep up. Commander Elena Rodriguez, coordinating the fleet's efforts from the Resilient, received the news with characteristic calm. "How long until the storm reaches the main population centers?" 36 hours, First Scholar Venn replied, his silver skin reflecting the red warning lights that had begun flashing across the bridge. "But that's not our biggest problem. Look at the projection models." The holographic display showed the storm's predicted path, but now it included something they hadn't seen before: feedback loops forming within the radiation field, creating areas of intensified energy that moved like predators stalking their prey. "It's not just a storm anymore," Sarah explained over the emergency channel. "It's becoming something else entirely. The radiation is interacting with itself, creating patterns we've never seen before. It's almost alive." The Meridian scientists were ready to admit defeat. Their civilization, for all its advancement, had never faced anything like this, but they hadn't counted on humanity's stubborn refusal to accept failure. "If the storm is evolving, we evolve faster," Elena declared. She turned to her communications officer. "Get me every ship in the fleet. Now." What followed was perhaps the most ambitious real-time scientific collaboration in human history. Every vessel became a floating laboratory. Medical teams worked around the clock, analyzing data from the affected colonies and adjusting the treatment formulas. Human intuition and creativity combined with Meridian precision and knowledge in ways neither species had thought possible. Sarah found herself working alongside First Scholar Venn, their different approaches to problem-solving creating solutions neither would have discovered alone. "Your people think differently than ours," Venn observed as they raced to modify the treatment. "Where we see patterns to be perfected, you see opportunities for change." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: a junior human medical technician who had been studying Meridian biology. "What if we're fighting the wrong battle?" she suggested during one of the emergency sessions. "Instead of trying to protect against the radiation, what if we teach their bodies to use it?" The idea was radical, even by human standards. But as they examined the latest data from the affected colonies, they realized she might be onto something. The treatment wasn't just helping some Meridians survive the radiation. In certain cases, their bodies were actually processing it, using the energy in ways their engineered systems had never considered possible. It's like discovering fire all over again, Sarah explained to the Joint Command. Yes, it's dangerous, but if we can control it, harness it. The next 18 hours were a race against time. As the storm bore down on the main Meridian worlds, every available resource was devoted to modifying the treatment. They weren't just trying to protect the population anymore. They were attempting to trigger a controlled evolutionary leap in an entire species. The modified treatment was ready just hours before the storm reached the central worlds. There was no time for extensive testing, no room for the careful protocols the Meridians preferred. They had to trust in humanity's greatest strength, the ability to take calculated risks when the stakes were highest. Elena stood on the bridge of the Resilient, watching as the storm engulfed the first of the central planets. The scene was both terrifying and beautiful, waves of radiation painting the sky in colors human eyes had never seen before. Treatment distribution at 98%, Lieutenant Park reported. All population centers covered. Now came the moment of truth. Would their gamble pay off, or had they just condemned billions to death? The first reports began to come in from the surface. The radiation levels were off the charts, far beyond what even their modified shields could handle. But the people. It's working. Sarah's voice cracked with emotion as she read the incoming data. Their bodies aren't just surviving the radiation. They're adapting to it. The treatment is evolving faster than the storm itself. Across the Meridian system, something unprecedented was happening. The treated population wasn't merely enduring the radiation storm. They were changing with it, their modified biology learning to thrive in conditions that should have been lethal. The storm that had threatened to end their civilization was instead becoming part of their evolution. But they weren't out of danger yet. The storm's intensity was still increasing, and they had no way of knowing if there was an upper limit to how much adaptation their modified treatment could handle. As the radiation reached levels never before recorded in the galaxy, humanity and the Meridians could only watch and wait, hoping that their combined ingenuity would be enough to face whatever came next. 3 months after the peak of the radiation storm, the Meridian system pulsed with a new kind of life. The crystalline spires of their cities now shimmered with an inner light, a visible manifestation of how their civilization had changed. What had begun as a desperate bid for survival had transformed into something neither species had imagined possible. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Meridian High Council, Earth's holographic representatives floating beside her as she presented the final data from their mission. The numbers told a story that would be studied for generations to come. The adaptation rate exceeded our most optimistic projections, she explained, gesturing to the displays showing cellular transformation patterns. Not only did the population survive, but they've developed abilities we're only beginning to understand. The Meridians aren't just resistant to the radiation. They've learned to harness it. First Scholar Venn, his skin now bearing the subtle luminescence that marked all treated Meridians, stepped forward to address the assembly. For millennia, we thought we had perfected ourselves. We believed that engineering away our capacity for change made us superior. We were wrong. The evidence was undeniable. The treated Meridians had developed an almost symbiotic relationship with the radiation that had threatened to destroy them. Their cities, once dependent on artificial power sources, now drew energy directly from the transformed radiation fields that permeated their system. Children born after the treatment showed even more remarkable abilities, their bodies naturally adapting to environmental changes that would have killed their ancestors. Commander Elena Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's primary liaison to the Meridian civilization, watched the proceedings with a sense of pride tinged with awe. "We came here to save a civilization," she remarked to Sarah during a break in the presentations. "Instead, we helped them rediscover something they'd lost, the power of evolution itself." But the changes weren't limited to the Meridians. The mission had transformed humanity's place in the galactic community. Word of their achievement had spread to other advanced civilizations, many of which had previously dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater. We've received requests for diplomatic relations from 17 different species, President Okafor announced to the United Earth Council. They're not interested in our technology. They want to understand our perspective, our way of thinking. The Meridians had already begun establishing joint research facilities on Earth, eager to study the very evolutionary processes they had once abandoned. Human scientists worked alongside their alien counterparts, exploring new frontiers in adaptive biology and resilient systems design. Your civilization's greatest strength, Ven told Sarah as they toured one of the new facilities, isn't your DNA or your technology. It's your understanding that imperfection isn't a weakness, it's an opportunity for growth. The success of the mission had sparked a renaissance in both civilizations. The Meridians began re-examining other aspects of their society that had become too rigid, too perfect. They studied humanity's history of overcoming challenges, learning that sometimes the most elegant solution isn't the best one. Humanity, in turn, gained access to advanced technologies and scientific knowledge, but they approached these gifts with a wisdom born of their own history. They didn't simply adopt Meridian technology wholesale. They adapted it, improved it, made it more resilient. 1 year after the storm, a new monument was unveiled in the heart of the Meridian capital. It depicted 2 DNA helixes intertwined, one bearing the precise engineering of Meridian genetics, the other showing the beautiful imperfections of human DNA. At its base, inscribed in both human and Meridian languages, were the words, "In our differences lies our strength. In adaptation lies our future." Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the monument, remembering the desperate message that had started it all. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" she asked Ven, who had become both a colleague and friend. The first scholar smiled, his luminescent skin pulsing gently. "No, we asked for help surviving a crisis. Instead, you taught us how to live again." As Sarah prepared to return to Earth, she reflected on how far both civilizations had come. The Meridians had learned that perfection without adaptability was a dead end, while humanity had proven that their greatest strength lay not in technology or power, but in their ability to face the impossible with creativity and courage. The radiation storm that had threatened to end one civilization had instead given birth to something new. A partnership between 2 species that complemented each other's strengths and compensated for each other's weaknesses. Together, they faced the future not with fear of what challenges it might bring, but with excitement for the opportunities to grow, adapt, and evolve. As her ship broke orbit, Sarah watched the Meridian system recede into the distance, its worlds now glowing with a light that symbolized rebirth rather than destruction. Humanity had given the stars their first lesson, but she knew it wouldn't be their last. They had shown the galaxy that true strength lies not in achieving perfection, but in the endless journey of becoming better. The primitive species that had barely reached its own moon had done more than save an advanced civilization. They had changed the very definition of advancement itself, and in doing so, they had taken their first steps toward a future where the combined strength of human adaptability and alien technology would open doors neither species had dreamed possible.